Hi, friends and colleagues. Welcome to GWFM Leadership Series, Conversation with a Global Leader. Today we have a very special guest, Tatiana. Tatiana is a Global Director and Workforce Management Head of Uber. Tatiana doesn't need any introduction. She is very well known in the global market. We still want to share few of her qualities and experiences where you'll really learn more about her. Tatiana started her career as a technical person. Eventually, she shifted her focus and passion towards WFM. Trust me, she has been in WFM more than 2 decades. She has worked for great companies such as Teletech, Alpine Axis, IBM, T-Mobile, Colonel Jess, Staples, American Express, now with Uber. She heads the global workforce management. Tatiana has got more than 25 years of experience in the industry. She is one of the WFM leaders and one of the influencers. What else we can talk about Tatiana? She is highly versatile, result driven, senior contact center leader, spent more than 2 decades of experience in workforce management, BPO, telecommunication, contact center operations experience within a multi-sites, multi-platform at global level. Skilled senior leader of multiple departments, including workforce management, service partner management, technical operations, command center, account teams. Have managed both remote and in-house teams as well as led several offshore projects. Extensive outsourcing experience with for both brick and mortars and telecommunicating agents, both domestic and offshore. Inspirational leader able to transform teams and strengthen internal and external customer and client partnership. Excellent people management skills with proven track record of building high performance and peak performance team by providing hands-on coaching, mentoring, and developing. Tatiana has very extensive qualification in all the areas of workforce management on a multitude of platforms, including aspects, EWFM, IEX, and manual long C calculations for 24/7 call center operations. We are eager to listen to Tatiana and her perception, experiences, and what she has to say to the global WFM community. Let's listen to her. Looking forward to seeing you, Tatiana. We're so excited to listen to you. Hi, Tatiana. It truly gives us a great pleasure having you with us today or waiting to listen to you. Always, you've been so inspirational, so motivating with your thoughts, ideas, and insights have been commendable.
Thank
Really,
you. Happy to be here.
really appreciate your presence. I know how busy you are. Taking time out to share your thoughts has been a great blessings for us.
Thank you.
Tatiana, we have this leadership series where we talk to the global leaders and some of the CXOs, where conversation with leaders series, where we have some of the questions where we converse with, and this gives us good insights for the members and also to community and rest of the world, irrespective of the profession. It could be HR or WFM or operations, anyone
Sure.
would get knowledge, also learnings from the conversation.
Okay, great.
How have you been, Tatiana? It's been a great time. I mean, a lot of time. I mean, it has been a long time that we are catching up, right? Face to face. Right.
Yeah, I think it's been a little while. I think it's been a few months for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Tatiana, while we look at the rich experience that you carry, know why and what made you choose WFM career? I've been seeing a lot of them, they switch, they don't really last long in the WFM career. What's your passion? And why WFM? What made you stick on and make your career in WFM?
That's a good question. I think like a lot of people, I sort of fell into workforce management. Started out my career way back in the day, as an agent on the phones, sort of worked my way into other positions, worked my way off the phones into like a contracts and compliance position, and started to do like database testing, and started to go into the realm of like reporting analysts and learn how to write SQL. And so I was an SQL report writer. And then that kind of fell into learning how to do call routing and being a telecom engineer. So I was kind of more down the technical path. And then I supported the WFM team quite a bit, right? So as both like writing queries and reports and creating dashboards for the WFM team, and then eventually doing the routing and IVR management. So I'd always worked really closely with the team. And one day, the call center director was like, "I'd like you to run the command center." And I was like, "Oh, I had never done anything like that." And I really liked it. I like the blend of the technology and the math, but also the people piece. I have a bachelor's degree in IT, but I knew that I never wanted to be like a programmer. Like it was just, I like the human aspect of workforce management. So it ended up, so I switched into workforce management. I've mostly done that. I've also done vendor management as well. But having had a WFM background, but kind of always have fallen back into workforce management. I always loved that combination of analytics and technology and people. It's a good mix for me.
That's really fascinating and motivating and inspirational. And I've seen a lot of leaders, especially in the US. Whoever I talk to, they all reported to you. I've been talking to a lot of I've been talking to a lot of leaders. They always say that like, I have reported to Tatiana and also mentored by Tatiana and guided by.
Oh, that's funny.
And I've seen few of them where I've recently spoken to. They switched the organization and they moved up to the career ladder. They always see that worked with you, and their experience has been very good working under you, and working with you has been a great experience.
Well,
and
that's good to hear.
Really nice to know your passion towards WFM. And there's something that very interesting to know, where people look up to you and also take your example to lead by example always.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. I was not aware. It's a small industry, right? You work with people, you work for people, and you interact in quite a few ways. So it's not that surprising. It's a little surprising that a lot of people have worked for me, but I think there doesn't seem to be much degree of separation between those of us and WFM. You kind of come across the same people and work with the same people in various contexts over the years.
Absolutely. I see that you're one of the leaders where lived in WFM industry longer, and I'm going to see you living longer and set examples further. Looking forward
Yep.
to learning.
I've been around for a while.
Great. Tatiana, can you tell us one thing without which your day doesn't start? Of course, you start with the coffee. And what do you think that few things that kickstart that? How do you kickstart your day?
So actually, I start almost every single day doing some sort of training, some sort of exercise. So as you know, I'm an avid triathlete. And I most days for me, weekdays, start at like 5 a.m. and I'm either swimming, biking, running, or I'm doing strength training. So for me, it's almost like a way to clear my head and meditation, and it gets me very grounded. I think about, what the day has to come. And so that is something I'm pretty diligent about it. I exercise usually 7 days a week, sometimes 6, but that I feel much better if I start my day that way. I work full time, obviously. I have kids, and I find that I don't always get it done if I have to do it in the afternoon or the evening. So for me, it's like my day starts if I've started out, breaking a sweat or pushing myself, training in some way.
That's very motivating. In fact, a lot of us stay late night and wake up late and start with the uh, wherever they are there on the bed, right? And seeing your kind of how do you start your day is been motivating. Of late,
I know that you're an avid athlete as well. So,
absolutely. We carry the same energy level, especially uh, in the physical energy perspective, and also like when we are physically strong, mentally also become strong. Just very very important aspects of it.
yeah.
Post pandemic, I see that a lot of WFM folks start their day when they are on the bed. So
Yeah. Pandemic has created some new habits, some of them good, some of them not good, but I guess whatever works for you.
absolutely, your habit is really motivating.
Good. Glad to hear it.
According to you, what are the few must do things, good habits to develop for WFM professionals to grow their career?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it is, and I feel like WFM has sort of grown as an industry. It used to be we were, I heard people say, we're the team that would always say no, or, everything was about, head count, everything was about, FTEs. And I think, understanding, that there's a human element to that, when you're short staffed or you're creating schedules, like there's a person attached to that, and being able to find that understanding of there's a balance between your budget and your needs there, and your customers as well as your employees. I call it the CEO concept, right? So good WFM kind of sits between your customers, so that would be your service levels, your average speed of answer, the owners of the business, right? So your shareholders, would be your budget, as well as your employees, so that would be schedule. So, good WFM really kind of tries to find that balance. So I think that, professionals in WFM, are good to understand that, there's some trade-offs, with that. The other thing I think that's important too is to really understand your audience, when you're presenting data. What is important to an operations manager may be very, very different than what you might be presenting to an executive or to other WFMs. So, changing the narrative. So it's like, so that you can kind of share like why this is important and why that person should care, or if you need a decision from them, altering that message a bit in a way that resonates. I see sometimes, WFM professionals will sort of create a deck, or some sort of a presentation, and you can see that it's not quite connecting, with the audience. So, finding that way of like, what are the questions that might get asked of me? How do I present that? If we go into every meeting talking about Erling C, with the VP of operations, they're not going to really care so much. So it's like, why should this person, matter? So, I think that's important as well. And then the other thing is to really use your data to tell a story. I'm a firm believer that if you can have impactful, presentations, impactful, decks, things like that, where you can really illustrate the story in a way that people can kind of come to the conclusion with you. That is really important. So, and not that they have to be super fancy. I work for Uber. We have a lot of ex-consultants that work here, myself included. And we tend to have very glossy, fancy decks. It doesn't have to be that way, but it has to be able to say, I'm looking at something, I understand the conclusion you're trying to get me to get to without, a lot of explanation. So I think that that's important for the teams to understand.
Absolutely. I mean, very valid point. And I see that like this is one of the great ideas. WFM professionals just prepare a deck and just same presentation is presented to either an operations team or finance team, right? And delivery
Exactly.
team, right? And also to HR team. So, and unless they become a storyteller, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, they should be a good storyteller, making it relevant to the audience, right? Audience is something that, is big time disconnected in the market. I think this is one of the good thought where how they can really grow and
Right.
become, like trusted and influences in the organization, right? And
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I've seen, you change the narrative a bit too when you start talking outside of, oh, well, we need to improve occupancy by X percent, or we're short this many FTEs. When you start to put that in real dollars, that's when you really start to get people's attention. It's a lot more impactful
right.
for me to say, that, hey, this decision that you're making is going to cost the company, $30,000 versus, okay, this decision is going to equate to, stuff 2 seconds of HT, so it's just like, being able to have people, understand, like, oh, okay, there's a cost to this, or, and not just using the percentages or an FTE, and actually using real dollars. I've seen that really to make a big difference, in trying to sell, a vision. So.
Absolutely. It's very, very essential. Like if a WFM folks and team does this effectively, I'm sure that, they will definitely be able to add a lot of value to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Even, and I think it's also important, even, because I like many leaders, you have teams that go from your newer WFM professionals, maybe a real-time analyst, maybe somebody who's doing scheduling, to people who are doing like long-range planning and strategic planning, and even making sure that like that RTA analyst understands their contribution to the bigger picture. And it's like, when you were able to, drive adherence, this is the impact that had to the business. So, helping those WFM teams really seeing how they contribute overall, no matter what their role is within the organization.
Absolutely. That's a very valid point, and I see that that's how they can really make a difference.
Yep.
Thanks, Tatiana. And if you could share some of the trends that you have witnessed during the 2021, maybe you could throw some light on that.
Yeah, flexibility, right? Like, so all of us, I think, we all learned very quickly that, I think as any good WFM team, we always want to have a business continuity plan, in case we lose a site, in case, nobody anticipated the entire world going down,
Cool.
At the same time. So I think BCP, business continuity plans mean something different today. I know for my own organization, we really haven't gone back to the office in any great, way. And the plan is that when we do start to go back, right now it's a voluntary basis. When we do start to go back, that it's going to be in a hybrid working model, so that, agents, we call them CSTs here. But basically agents have that flexibility where, they'll be scheduled in the office some days, they'll be scheduled at home. So one of the things is, having, the portability to be able to do that. We've largely moved to Chromebooks. So rather than having, either having a desktop, right? Like most companies are not going to invest in someone having both a desktop in the office and a desktop at home. And that's not very portable, right? We learned that during the pandemic, when we had to like quickly send people home, people were like going home with like, big monitors and things like that. So having that, portable technology, but maybe not spending, on laptops for the entire population. So that, I think that's a trend that's going to be here to stay. The flexibility of, and also like, what does that mean in terms of, adherence? And when, so one of the things we've really been thinking about is like, as agents start to return and they're in a hybrid model, how do you know where they're at? And you've got teams that are maybe 50% of the office some days, 50% at home. Does it matter, if you've scheduled them to be in the office? Does it matter if you schedule them to be home? How do you track productivity, for home versus in office? So these are questions that I don't know that we necessarily have all the answers to yet, but these are trends that I think we have to be prepared for, is that sort of, portability of the workforce, and our own teams, right? I think about the fact that, we're used to having, a lot of us are used to having command centers. We're used to having teams where you have rows and rows of monitors. And that's, they've mainly been working from home as well. So what does that mean for our own WFM teams? Is that still necessary? If you're in a hybrid model, how much should you expect your own WFM teams to be in the office versus being at home? So I think just being super flexible, with that sort of thing. So.
Absolutely. 2021 has been a big learning.
Yeah.
Never
Well, and I don't know about other companies, but our company is very, what happens within the markets with the supply and the more of the demand side, right? So as countries respond differently to COVID restrictions, it very much impacts our business. I know many companies who rely, companies that are transportation type of companies that are business travel sort of companies, delivery sort of companies, like that's very volatile. So, finding ways of being nimble with your forecast and working with your, either your internal sites or your BPO outsourced sites, so
Right.
that we a good example is the way the Australia and New Zealand markets have responded to COVID. We've had many times where like volumes are coming up, this is fantastic, and then suddenly a new COVID restriction and the entire country goes locks down again. So how do you respond to that in a way that you're protecting as the volumes go down, you're not completely overstaffed, you're not causing more volatility. So we've had to be very flexible in how we're thinking about those forecasts and how we're using those agents so that we can move from one type of business to another. So we're not constantly like, you've got 40 hours one week and 10 hours next, like that. Nobody can work like that. So that hopefully that's not a trend that we'll see forever, but it's certainly a trend for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. I mean, and you have summarized it in a nutshell. It's really beautiful. And this has been a big learning. We never witnessed it in the past, and picked it up and then implemented it, right? And we moved on. With,
Right.
and there's been a great learning for everyone, especially WFM folks and team and even in the organization. It's been a first time experience, but everyone really worked very well too. And businesses seeing WFM is a key function,
Oh, for sure.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, we've also learned other measures too. So, like one of the things that we measure our success on, as most WFM teams, is, the accuracy of our forecast. Well, this year and last year have probably been the worst years I've ever seen for forecast accuracy. So, what we also look at is like, but were we able to, meet the service levels? Were we able to still keep our occupancies high, still keep our partners, busy with work? And so, really kind of expanding what you defined as success in an area where you really have no control. This isn't a misstep in a forecast. So somebody forgot some seasonality. It's, we have to respond very, very quickly. And a lot of industries do this all the time. I came from an industry that was business travel. You had a hurricane or a typhoon in an area, suddenly you had to respond to that. So it's not different than what we've seen, but I think, how you recover from that, I can't control those factors, but I can control how we think about the supply side of that or the demand side of it. How do we respond to customers, who desperately need to get through? Or if we have more people than we have, demand for, what do I do to make sure that, I'm keeping those people busy, that I have other places I can move. So really learning to be very nimble, in how you think about supply and demand.
Absolutely. And what do you see and foresee 2022 trends, Tatiana?
I think with we're going to continue to see new channel types, right? So, I think in the past, it's been a lot of companies have been very traditional, where they started with phone,
Right.
eventually added chat, added email. Starting to see a lot more tech companies like my own in the field where phone is not the primary contact. Contacts might be through in-app messaging, might be WhatsApp, social media. So I think we're going to see more and more of those trends in the industry, which creates, additional challenges for the WFM team, because we're starting to see not only the rise of some synchronous, channels such as WhatsApp, and continue with chat and things like that, but a lot more asynchronous channel, communication, so how do you respond to that? Understanding that, traditional WFM, forecasting and modeling that worked well for phone, where it's, one phone call, one agent. It's
Right.
very easy to measure that, and how do you switch that when you're doing WhatsApp messaging? How do you switch that, when you have multiple concurrencies for one type of business, but maybe it's, a different concurrency type. What do you do if you start with a chat, but have to end with a phone call? So I think that, the trend is going to be more towards moving to that area, which, well, I think the WFM teams can learn from and respond to and figure out the best, staffing for that. Some of the challenges also then become like pulling the metrics that are necessary. How do you measure customer interactions, when you might start in one channel and end in another channel? How do you understand like what your demand needs are, with that? So I think that's really going to continue to be a trend. Another thing that I think is very needed in our industry is having tools that are adapting to those new trends, right? So I mentioned earlier that we have largely moved to our agents all have Chromebooks now. So, we've very much moved away from the traditional desktop. We've moved away from, the more traditional, laptop environment. The challenge is a lot of the WFM tools that are out there don't work on Chromebooks. So we have had some challenges with being able to, I'll give an example. We really think that having a desktop analytics tool would be very, very important for us. Being able to, especially in a hybrid environment, very much harder to do coaching, much harder to understand where agents are getting stuck, harder to understand some productivity when they're not physically in the office. So the challenge we found is that a lot of the desktop analytics tools that are out there, they're not supported on Chromebooks. So they don't work in the technical environment. So I think that's an area that the industry needs to catch up with, because that is, I think, the future of working, is having that portability. So the tools and the technology need to be able to support that, and we're really struggling with finding technical partners that can support this new environment that we're in.
Absolutely. And as you said, the self-help industry is in trend and going to be in trend, right? Self-help for everything, right from learning and everything.
Yes.
Absolutely. Great, Tatiana. Then what is the organization should do in 2022 as per your insight? As per your suggestions, what industries should do, organizations should do in 2020? Maybe, they should do differently. What do you think that they should do differently?
Well, I think, when you think about what they should do differently, I think really understanding, and you're seeing a lot more of this discussion. Industries have always been very focused, of course, on, customer satisfaction and, and obviously the business aspect. We're not running nonprofits. We're all in industry. So, balance sheets matter, but also recognizing the importance of the employee. We're really starting to see a shift and more of an understanding about employee engagement and employee satisfaction. And I know in the US in particular, we've seen what we've called the great resignation. Many companies have seen, people changing jobs, changing careers. So recognizing, that the power of the employee, and as I mentioned, the WFM teams really trying to find that balance between employee needs, customer needs, and the needs of the business. I think that is a trend that is here to stay. And so, finding solutions that work, but still give your employees that flexibility. WFM teams need to be a part of that solution as well, right? We can't just sort of wash our hands and not assume, that we're not a big part of that. I mean, when you are when you are taking contacts, your schedules are very important to you. The time off that you get, we play a very big part in that employee experience and satisfaction journey. So, being able to respond to that, I think that's a great, something that the WFM team has a great responsibility in, and to recognize that as well, and to use that power and to find workable solutions with operations. So I think that is something that companies and WFM teams need to be very focused on in the future.
Absolutely. That's a valid point. And considering the great resignations, not only in the US, everywhere, it's happening. In fact, all industries witnessing. The companies have gone through 50 to 60% of resignations. And market is booming big time and shattering talent. All of a sudden. And then industry, just the beginning of the pandemic, we were thinking of overstuffed right now, and all of a sudden booming is being we never expected that, kind of demands that you're going to get.
Yeah,
That's right.
never seen it before in my career. So yeah, it's been quite eye opening and made me really look at, how do we make this, how do we support the business? How do we make sure our teams are feeling supported as well? Another area, and I know that I'm sure you've had other leaders talk about this too, is really the rise of like AI, in WFM, and having bots and things like that can help the team with their work, automation, rules, things like that. So being able to have more of being able to respond very quickly without having necessarily the human interaction, but that evolves your WFM team as well, right? So, if you're saving time there, where can you provide additional analysis? So, I kind of look at it with my own team on, if I can save you some of the lower level work, because we can have, AI kind of support that,
Right.
what other things could you get more deep into? So I think that you're starting to see a lot more analysis coming from the teams when they have a little bit more free time because of that. So I think that's a trend that will continue to deepen within our industry as well.
Absolutely. Right. What are the five top priorities that you think for 2022, Tatiana?
Oh gosh. I think priorities are going to be somewhat of a stabilization, right? So it has been, I feel like the last 2 years have just been sort of a blur and a constant reaction,
Right.
to what's happening in the world, what's happening in the markets, what's happening in our team. So, my personal priority is to have a little bit more predictability,
Right.
and being able to anticipate and understand, what's coming. Like we've seen these sort of things happen for the last 2 years. So how can we anticipate? Priorities also are, I think we are going to be back to, at least in some aspect, people are going to be going back into the offices, hopefully in 2022. So, prioritizing, what will that look like, for the teams? How will that change, as well, for the teams? Let's see. So other priorities, I think, for us too, is being more nimble when it comes to our forecasting methods.
Okay.
As I've mentioned, we're seeing a rise in the different types of channels that we're supporting. And in some cases, Erlang is really more designed for that like phone predictability.
Right.
That is not necessarily going to work, for WhatsApp messaging or other types of channels. So, really sort of examining what forecast methods work, and applying those, differently, and recognizing, we've really moved away from like a one-stop fits all, as an organization, as a WFM. So I think that's going to be a priority as well. We're really looking at, where that matters. The other priority too is looking beyond just service level as the only metric. I think we tend to kind of, live and die by, well, what's the service level? What's the service level? Understanding that is a piece of the customer experience, but also, what is that, what is an average speed of answer? How do we look at backlog, for instance? It's interesting, as you have more, email and in-app type of support, occupancy doesn't mean the same there, because, in a good environment, you have a healthy backlog. There's always work to be done. So, when I look at, the metrics that matter, I don't know that service level is necessarily the right one or the only one that I should be looking at, for asynchronous channels. So delayed, deferred response. So I think that's another, important thing for us to be focused on, and being able to look at metrics in a more holistic way.
These are all the trends, in fact, market is going to witness in 2022 and many more.
Yes.
That's a great insight, Tatiana. There's a last question where what is the message that you have for WFM industry and also overall industry at the global level?
Gosh, I think that you mentioned this earlier, and I think that the importance of good workforce management has really, really been emphasized in the past couple of years. I'm sure a lot of us have worked for various companies with different attitudes towards the workforce management team. I've worked for companies that have really looked at workforce management as sort of a necessary evil. They haven't really seen as much of a value necessarily in the team. And then I've worked for some. I'm lucky enough to work for one right now who really understands that we're a partner to the business. So, I say that is possible in every company, and that is possible in every business of, being able to show that value of workforce management, being able to be a consultant, right? That's one thing I'm always, talking to my team about is, it is your job and your responsibility to consult back to the business on recommendations, and show them hey, you could choose this path or this path. Here are the costs and implications of each of those. This one might cost you more money. However, I think it'll be, it will protect service levels, a little bit better. This one might be a little bit different. So I really feel like, this is possible, and being able to speak that language and to show that value, whether you are brand new in the field and you're just you're brand new RTA, or you're a reporting analyst, or you are running a command center or a global operation, there is value in what this team does. And I do think that that our industry, it used to be a very, very niche, very small industry. Every, companies might have one workforce, really seeing a lot more investment in these teams because they can see how that really partners and sits between finance, sits between operations. So it's a trend that I think has gotten stronger for the industry. And so it's exciting to actually see the value of our work become more recognized.
I mean, these are all the things that are very essential. And last question, in fact, which is not part of the syllabus for the diversity.
Sure.
Since now industry is looking at diversity to have retention, also building great culture, and also build work-life balance. And what is that? You have suggestions for rest of the industries. That what is the initiative they should think of, and probably they could do something in 2022 as one of the priorities.
This is a question that's very near and dear to my heart. And I think diversity can mean many things, right? Diversity could be, hiring, women on the team. It could be hiring somebody of, a different, ethnicity or religion, different socioeconomic. I have a global team, and diversity means something different in every region. In the U.S., it might mean that you're hiring somebody of color. In my, Philippines team, it might mean that you're hiring somebody who didn't go to the best schools necessarily or had different sort of socioeconomic background. So, recognizing that diversity, there's not just one definition, and it doesn't mean the same thing to every person. I myself do try to ask questions in the interview, even to understand, especially if I'm hiring a leader, how they would embrace, diversity. It also means looking at people with maybe different backgrounds. We have an interesting mix where I work now, where we have people who have worked in the industry, like myself, for a very long time, and we have people who come in sort of from different industries, and that adds value. And I've actually found that that's worked really, really well for us because, I have people who've come in who have either been consultants or had somebody who basically worked at airlines and worked, to try to understand scheduling there. So it's like a very non-traditional background. And that has really made us a stronger team because we don't have everybody who's sort of had this linear path in WFM. So I think that's important. And to ask the questions and to be open-minded that, not everybody's going to have the same exact background. You might surprise yourself by hiring somebody who's extremely bright and hasn't worked their way up, like the rest of us has, and has come in from another industry, and that can have that value as well. So I think that's important. And then, I think it's also important for us to recognize, at least for my own team, we tend to see more diversity, to be honest, with those people that are newer to the or less tenured. So, I see more diversity in my like RTA team. And as we get up the ladder,
Wow.
it tends to be a lot less women, a lot
Wow.
less diversity.
I see.
And so recognizing, that a lot of the diverse talent you have might be in some of your more junior team members. And so taking the time to develop those team members so that they have equal opportunities, when it's time to advance with their careers.
That's amazing and highly motivating and encouraging, Tatiana.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking your time out to spend time with the GWFM. And GWFM is pushing boundaries to expand and reach out to every WFM professionals in the world. We want to touch their heart and soul, build community, share knowledge, and expand the professional networking. You've been a great contributor in GWFM, being an advisory, and you've been one of the influencers and role model to many of the WFM folks around the world.
Great. Happy to be here.
Great, Tatiana. Thank you so much for taking your time out. Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for doing this. I think it's wonderful, the organization that you're building. So it's very nice to see various leaders and various ideas from other companies. So thanks for facilitating that.
It's really honored to have you with us, and your support, guidance, and suggestions have been great. And we are in the path of learning, and we want to see that how we can really create value to the WFM community and also to industry.
Great.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Tatiana, for taking your time out.
Thank you.
Really honored to have you. That's great interactions with you. And I'm sure that WFM community and our members are going to really have a great insight, great learning from our discussion.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you.